Commission of Mendon. We have Dan Byer here as a guest, and I don't think
Kathy Schofield.
Kathy Schofield. Okay. My name is Craig Weinfuss. I'm the chairman of.
Hi,
the
Craig.
Historical
Nice to meet you.
Commission. And I think
Board Chair, Secretary.
Joan Burrow.
Jen?
Joan.
Joan.
And I'm Catherine Bush.
Hi, nice to meet you.
So, yeah, we just wanted to get together with the Mendon Historical Commission because I know you guys did a fantastic job putting together your historic district. And Upton would like to go ahead and perform something similar in Upton to protect our historic buildings. So we just kind of wanted to maybe pick your brains a little bit tonight and see how you guys actually went ahead and achieved that. And maybe we can learn how to kind of do that for Upton, I guess.
So do you already have established historic districts?
So we haven't established our historic district, but we have that established, but we tried to get a historic district bylaw, but we were not able to actually.
Yeah, so back.
Get them passed.
It failed by, I think, one vote. Yeah.
So back
This
in
was-
the nineties,
Yeah, this was-
ladies on this commission, I believe, did all the hard work to document and list 187 properties.
Wow.
So there's a Main Street Historic District, there's a West Main Historic District, and there's a North Main, which is right behind this historic district, all fairly close together. And they're all listed on the Mass Historic
Macris.
Commission Macris.
Yeah.
Site. There's only 4 properties in town that are on the national register. Town Hall is one of them. CCC Camp is one of them. The Knowlton Factory, I believe, is the third, and I never know what it is. But all the rest are listed, all of the ones in those 3 districts are listed on Macris.
Yeah, yeah.
So that work was done, and I know they put together a warrant article. Again, I think it was in the 90s.
I don't know if it was in the 90s or if it was in the 2000s. It was when Russ was on the thing, but of course, I don't know exactly how long he's been. Right, yeah, like he's been on it since, Jesus was young. So, but it did, yeah, I got the impression it was either the late, I'm sure it built off of the work that was done for the state register and the national register. So I think it was all sort of a group effort that was part of that drawing. But it failed, and there were a lot of like, they're gonna come around and teach you what to paint your porch, and you can't, which, I mean, there are places that do that, but it can be as restrictive or not. As you
Right, which was our
to make it.
approach was as minimal as possible, in order to get the community to buy in. And it's funny because I think the timeline is almost identical for Mendon, that we did the big push in the 90s. It failed, we had done all of the historic inventories and, had the districts identified by the state. But we just couldn't push it through. So, I mean, you always know you're up against a battle, and it's about getting the buy-in, from, your community. In using a few of some hallmark properties.
I feel like that makes that, it's like, well, since we don't have this, we weren't able to save XYZ thing that you think is important. And we couldn't save this one if we wanted to save it in the future. Like, if you care about this specific notable building, then we need a law to protect it, because we're not, which is accurate. Like, things have come before the board that we had no control over in terms of preventing them being demo. We could just slow it down. That was.
Right. And do you have a demolition delay bylaw? Yeah, and how long is it? 12 months?
Yeah, I think, are they not all the same in the state?
No, each town.
Each town
Because we changed ours from 6 to 9,
Oh, okay, yeah, I think ours is
but
12.
yours is probably up there.
It gives us no teeth. What do you do?
Right.
Yeah,
It's the same
all
problem.
all you can do is like wait it out, right?
Yeah,
It's just a question of making them pay taxes on it while they wait for you to get.
Statement from the town manager is that many cases, people are coming in now with 40B projects. And if it's a 40B project, the paperwork takes so long, and the process takes so long, they don't care if you put a 12 months, they just wait it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's,
We've lost 3 properties in the last 6 months. Not in the districts, but historic homes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure there's more.
Yeah,
the outliers are,
demolition by neglect that happens too.
Yeah.
We'll take something.
That's
and
that's a,
You're like, oh no, and then we just left the roof off it for 6 months and now no one can live there. So we're just gonna have to turn it down kind of thing, which is
Yep.
like, okay, but like, you knew what was happening when you didn't like fix the roof, like this is.
oh, yeah, yeah.
We-
it'll-
None of
did a
us
lot
are
of-
that stupid.
you know, somehow it's full of mold, it's uninhabitable. It was just rented out 3 weeks ago, but never mind that, but it has to come down.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of.
Question, like, since you've
But-
instituted this law in your town, how many times has a property come before you that you've had to use this?
We,
Or have you ever?
I think one property slipped through
Demo delay we're talking about, or
or
No, your,
through the
district?
district bylaws, yeah.
Do you have a historic commission and a historic district?
Yeah, so
Yes.
we have a historic commission and a historic district commission, and we are actually now in the process of basically merging them, although legally there'll be two commissions. They have like 80% of the same members.
Okay.
Because, so what I will caution you, what happened in Mendon, there was a drive to, they did this, they formed a study commission, they did the study report, they put in all the work, did it, got the bylaw passed, and then everybody was done. And that sat for probably a year and a half with no action until we finally got enough people on the district commission to finally come up with design guidance and start actually enforcing the bylaw. And that's really how I got involved, actually. I was on the historic commission, but more from a process standpoint, because I worked for the town in terms of like our permitting software. And so now we're circling back and kind of merging them. So like I'm the vice chair of the district, the chair of the commission. You're only on the commission. There's a couple members who are on both, but we're just having one meeting together.
and did you have to recruit extra people for
It's,
bylaws?
yeah. So you're supposed to form like a, I mean, it sounds like you guys have the study done. That you really just need to draft the bylaw. I mean, that's huge. That's the part I think that's a monumental undertaking, is all the research.
Oh, okay. You mean the study as far as setting up the district?
Yeah, so if you go look, there's a manual from the state on historic districts, and I would suggest going through it. Basically, you have to write this whole study report, you have to hold a public hearing, you have to submit it to the planning board, you have to submit it to the state, and there's all these very hard deadlines that are like 90 days out. And we've had issues, we struggled with the second Washington Street district. I think it took us 3 attempts to get it right and get it all done because a deadline got missed or something was missing.
Yeah, and those,
Real complicated, and unfortunately, people that don't want it will pick apart any little, oh, you did it 89 days, it's invalid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's
So-
always somebody who's gonna be a pain.
yeah, but I think that, the advocates that you can get to support and back you are the ones that live in those areas. It convince them, by teaching them about the history of their properties. And I mean, the PR is the biggest component in all of this. It's,
Yeah.
you've got to sell it to the community. And we were very fortunate to have a couple of people living in the districts that we wanted to establish, and they were great supporters. Articles in the newspaper, public meetings to discuss, what you want to do, surveys, of the people in the districts, how do you feel about being in a district? What are your biggest concerns? What would you find too restrictive? So, getting that feedback from people was really great for us to try to forge ahead. And people were really good.
What were their concerns?
Well, a lot of it was, everything that you pull on a rumor mill, yeah, you're gonna tell us what we
Yeah.
can and can't do. So with that information, it was like, all right, now we build the bylaw that responds to what their concerns are. No, we don't, fuss with the paint, and we understand that, buildings need maintenance and it's not always cost effective, but, here's, our goal is to preserve the frontage, and just work with people,
Basically, you're just concerned about the facade of the building, front of the building, and keeping it looking as it has always looked.
Yeah, Yeah,
I believe it's
Exactly. We
exterior
don't-
Architectural.
interior, we don't
Okay.
touch. We encourage, but we don't discuss that at all. But again, it's just about sharing the history of those buildings with the homeowners or the people who want to make alterations and just say, you might. And we have resources, we've looked up resources, architects, engineers, so on and so forth, people who work in the field and it's a little more expensive, but depending on what you're willing to do, here are a list of resources that you can use, that might be able to help you guide you through the process. So
So you must have had, pluses for the homeowners, like this is gonna be a
Oh, yeah.
benefit for you if we do this. What are some of the
Hang
benefits?
on, I think we did like a FAQ type document.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm gonna
I think
find
that's necessary.
Lynn did that,
Yeah.
I think.
And obviously, the most important thing is that, we've watched so many historic buildings come down, It's been a long road in Mendon. There is a very, we have a lot of people invested in, who have property that want to, demo and build and, expand, which is fine, but, our center of town is pretty much all we have left. It's like, okay, hold on, put the brakes on before we go, jumping. And a lot of people in the community responded by saying they liked the historic character of the community. And so you kind of build on that.
We want to keep that.
Exactly. Let's protect it, let's work together.
I don't remember the initial vote, but I know the Washington Street and the Bates one, it passed by a pretty decent majority of town.
Yeah.
Once we finally got all the stuff, there were certain individuals that fought it. I think our planning board in general is not, at the time, was not in favor of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if the first one was as clear, but it seems like the residents are coming around to the understanding if this is the way you protect these things.
There was a lot of door to door, knocking on doors, talking to people. That was very effective.
How do you find enough people to help you to do this?
We never did.
You never did.
I think that's, yeah,
Basically, you see people here that would do something,
Right. So we called on the Historic Society, who were super invested. They, got on the bandwagon. We all went out and, talked to people and, some people on the street, some people you don't. And then they started talking to each other. It was like, all right, why don't you guys, give us some feedback, tell us what you think, what do you want to do? And this is why we think it's,
Must have gotten very knowledgeable about every little aspect of this thing, because you couldn't sit down with people and not have the specific facts about every little
Yeah.
thing.
Question.
If they don't want it, they're going to be, asking some really tough questions.
absolutely. But I think, the most engaging conversation was not so much historical, but it was the restrictions. What are the restrictions going to be?
Yeah.
How is this going to affect my property? My house was built in 1980. Why can't I do what I want to do with it? And it's like, well, basically, you can. We just, and we've negotiated. You've been working on solar arrays.
It involves all the buildings in the district, no matter when they were built. So you
Yes.
have the house built in 1980. They want to put an addition on their house or change something and build on the exterior of the building, they would have to come to you with their plans.
Right,
yeah, so
right.
there's a section in our design guidelines on new construction and things like that. But that is an issue in some of our districts where you have some
And
1980s
new
houses.
construction, you want them to be in the framework of architecturally melding in with the architecture that
Well,
is in the area of where they're building.
Yeah, actually, that's not what I'm trying to find the exact wording. New construction to be designed in a manner that is compatible and sympathetic to the character of the districts. But it sounds like like you don't want to just replicate something. You actually want it to be clear that this is new versus old.
You don't want some
but we don't want like sheet metal buildings.
Yeah.
Or, yeah,
All glass
Steel
buildings, to your capes and your Victoria.
yeah. I mean, Mendon was, this is one of the areas I think we were kind of lax because we have a mishmash. Whereas like other places have like a district that's very like similar, everything's the
Yeah,
same.
very, very discreet.
And I-
All the old houses are like Concord. It's like all the old houses are
Yeah.
all the time.
Right, they're all the same type of
They're all
house,
the
same
type of
style.
house. They've all been there since the same year, and like, you can very easily cut that off and just be like, these stay the same. Whereas when you have it inter.
We don't
dispersed
have
with
that. We have like, this is this house, this is that house, they're all over the place.
Yeah, and we definitely, even in the
So-
district that were just described, we definitely have, we have like swaths that are all from the
Mm.
same period, but there's
Yeah.
definitely, they were on very large lots initially, many of them. So then they've been sort of built every other one is a more modern house, and then there's a Victorian, and then there's, so
Right.
they've like filled in the gaps over the years. And so now like all the properties are sort of the same distance from each other, but they weren't initially, and so
Right.
you've got like every other one is a Victorian, and then there's like a colonial every third or fourth, so it is hard because there is a lot of disparity, and that doesn't necessarily mean that architecturally they're all like very, very different. Some of the more modern ones were built in a previous style, but
Right.
Did you ever discuss creating a district but excluding some houses in that district from the district?
It seems like the state really frowns
yeah,
upon that.
state wants them to be contiguous.
We have a couple individuals, like one house, I think if there's one house, it was Jane Lowell's
Yeah.
house, there's another house on Bates Street. But they don't want you doing that. In a few cases, we've ended the district where like, this is the last house. But-
They decided ours too.
Yeah,
Because I know that's why like, things like even the Ristine building are in the district but are not contributing. Like it's like you include them because they're in between the other things that you want to
I
include.
was thinking more from the standpoint of if we had a small number of people that are absolutely against it, no matter what the discussion
Right,
was.
you just touch it.
We'll leave your house.
it could be.
They could be brought into the district at a later date, but
Yeah, I know, like, now that you're saying it, this is coming back to me with the initial Main Street district, those condo buildings should have been excluded. They were at the end of the district. And I remember somebody at town meeting being very upset as why are you including 1980s condominiums? So like in that case, we should have just
Yeah, I
cut
mean,
it off,
yeah,
but
you could just be like, we don't need you. There's nothing past you.
But
You.
at the town meeting, it's too late.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Done.
No, at the town meeting, you're just like, and that's it.
I mean, it's-
We're not gonna go back to the beginning.
It's
so-
wild. Like, I'll send you the link to this manual.
because the district
Yeah, that'd be great.
that we defined house.
Right.
It then defined geographical.
Well, I mean, they,
So I don't know if there's any homes going up Main Street that are not part of the historical homes that was.
I think there are some.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Aren't listed because they're not historical.
No,
Yeah.
they're, non-contributing houses are still
We had to list them in our study.
listed. If I remember correctly, there are some that are in the paperwork at least, that are described. And it just says like not contributing. They're not contributing to the historic value of the district. The things that are like.
I don't know if that woman Jen Doherty runs that listserv. She's a phenomenal resource. So it's all, you almost like say like, here's what we want to do. What do you think? And she'll say.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
She'll, yeah.
So when the matter, figure how we get acceptance of individuals in that district, to accept the warrant article that says we're going to create a historic.
It might-
district, that will, I hate to say it, restrict some of
Yeah.
what you can do in person house. to
Right.
Keep the historic nature.
You might consider trying to work on your design guidance up front. Understand because that was, I mean, I'm in Mendon, we had nothing and then we put it in place later on. But to give people an idea of the kind of things, and ours is lacking. I will say the second time around that we updated ours, we actually had a developer, I don't know, Lonnie Tinio, who came and was really helpful to be like, hey, like you're being ridiculous that, this is what a developer's looking, and he actually really helped us make our guidance make sense and, focus on the things that we actually cared
You have a
about.
draft of that we could.
Yeah, it's on our website. I can send you, we can send you the Word doc. To be honest, I don't think our design guidance is anything special. I think other towns have much better.
Because we have one,
Work.
we made one, Craig and I were on a different committee that made one for a prospective development that didn't happen, but we made the design.
Yeah.
Keep it, again, like sympathetic with the rest of the town center. And then we wanted to apply that in a like a broader sense, but like planning board wouldn't own it, and it was like a whole thing. Nobody wanted to be in charge of
Oh,
enforcing it.
yeah. Been there.
So we already have something to work with out of that, and we did look at a bunch of different towns' design standards in order to make that, as I recall. I think that's how we like cribbed off of other people's,
Yeah,
if I remember
And
correctly.
we've excluded a lot.
But there are always things where you're like, nobody's gonna do, like, this is not a reasonable ask. That, you know, like some places we're like, okay, well, we're not Concord, so.
Well, like, yeah, like solar, we've kind of taken the position that we don't like, put it on the back of your house if you can. We did kind of somebody wanted ground mounted that we worked with them, but we're not just saying no solar.
Right, yeah.
In certain things you can't say.
That's not the hill that I'm going to
But,
die.
right, we kind of figured if that keeps you in your house and stops you from letting it be neglected and demolished, that's a win for us.
Accept that, because the roof is still on.
Right, right.
It's probably even a new roof, because they usually redo it before.
Yeah. So that, I think that's been our struggle in trying to balance, like, making somebody wait 3 weeks to post a hearing and all that, so they can, change one window or something versus like something that's, rebuilding an entire house. And I think we're still figuring that out as we go. We haven't had that many hearings, maybe 5 or 6 in total. Most of what,
It's really minor stuff, and you're just like, it's fine.
right, most of what we're getting is
We're not
re-roofing,
worried about this.
repair, small things. There's a lot more you can have blanket certificates, like, we're gonna hold a hearing and say that, all roof replacements are allowed under these conditions. And I think that's something we need to explore on our end more.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like you can get to, especially.
So do you have like a roofing situation that you would turn down?
So what we tell people is that the color of material used on roofs is exempt. So if you come to us and say, I want to replace my roof with asphalt shingles, I want to replace it with asphalt shingles, we say, go for it. We're not doing a hearing. If you come to us and say, I want to rip off my asphalt roof and do metal shingles, then I think that would need to trigger a hearing, because that's a change.
We just,
One house we have up the street.
we just had a. It was like, do we need to do anything about this? We want to replace our failing asphalt shingle roof with
Yeah.
a metal roof, and we were kind of like, we can't do anything about it, even if we did want to do something about it, so enjoy.
White cedar,
Shane?
Oh, that's right, it's
Yeah.
shade.
and roof is gorgeous on a 1750 house with a roof. is like this.
Yeah, it's just,
Old shingles, but.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah.
Vinyl siding is the one we've dealt with, and we've compromised, like, we just had one where we compromised and said, okay, can you do wood on the front of the house and then do whatever on the back? Which is tricky, because you don't want people to have to spend all this money to,
right,
know.
right. I mean, every dance is different. You have to talk a lot of people off the cliff.
well, it's like, you're like, well, what's gonna keep this house standing? Because they're not all
Right.
capable of being preserved to the degree financially that we would like to preserve, right?
Right.
My own house included, so,
Well, the observation that I made a couple of weeks back was Mendon, the same as Upton, were farming communities. You don't find a lot of homes that were spectacularly built. You better be in West Upton.
Yeah.
Most of them were built as farmhouses.
Mm.
Here they are, 150, 200 years later, and some of them, when you start to.
they're a little wavy, yeah.
you find out they're a little rough.
Oh, mine isn't even.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, who made this decision? So mine's only 1894, and so, I mean, we've got some older ones that are just like, it's still standing, yay, good job.
Here's a question, how long did it take you to go through this whole process from time
Here.
initiated it till the time it was voted and passed?
I do remember, I'm looking at the district, I'll see when the agenda started.
Does remember when he was 8 years old when he started.
Yeah.
20, so the first agenda for the district commission was 2016. And I believe this says it was adopted in 2017. But I think it was one of those things we were talking about. And I think that's when Mike Goddard got involved and said he would do that, and he helped push that.
Right.
And that was
right.
how we leveraged him to come back. So it probably took a year. I mean, I think once the report is done, I think it's a minimum of, I want to say 90 days that it has to go to the state and the planning board and all these different things, all before your town meeting. So you're probably easily looking at 6 months of bureaucratic process time.
I don't think we have to do any of that. We already have the historical district. All we're discussing is how do we put a warrant article in effect to
Yeah.
create a district commission and a full.
Well, we
I
probably
would-
would declare to the state that we want to make a local district. We have
Right.
we have state and federal districts, which are not this, like,
Right. They're not the
they're
same.
not the same, and our districts are not the same. Like, they
Yeah.
compress the the three state ones into one larger, they took two of them and
Yeah.
put them together to make the federal one, because they were told that the three that they got into the state database would not pass it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think,
So they only have one at a federal level and then three smaller individual ones at a state level. I think we can use that information
I
to
think,
fill out whatever form it
Yeah.
is, but I think we probably still have to fill out whatever form it is. And you're like, like copy the information over if nothing else. And there's updates that need to be done too, because that was done like at least in the 2000s. Some of those houses some of the buildings that are listed there are not there anymore.
I
Because it's
believe,
got the barn that got torn down before I don't know if you remember that Barbara talking about it, but before we became on this commission, there was a barn behind the town hall that like got everybody up in arms when it got torn down. It was, I don't know what year before we came on, but it was like, it was like the tragedy that made a bunch of people care, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
It's still in the paper.
At the town hall here.
I think so. That's what I was told.
So
I
there,
mean, you know better, you lived here. I didn't live here that, so that, but it is in the paper.
For the first 15 years I lived here, I had like blonde blonde.
I
know.
Child.
That's, I get that. But yeah, so there are things in that paperwork that either are different or whatever.
yeah,
So-
well, I can just, so I believe, again, you'd have to read this. I believe you need to formally establish a historic district study committee, which
Okay.
may be able to be the same people, but you may have to have that. Then you have to do this whole report. You have to file it with the state. You have to file it with your planning board. You have to hold a public hearing, but it sounds like the contents of that report, you've done. You just got to get it all together and then go through this process. So you guys actually maybe are in really good shape.
more importantly, you want to get out into the public.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you need to do socializing really first.
Yeah, and like we would use opportunities like, fire, you guys have the fireworks and things like that. We would get out there with a spread, show people, talk to people, engage people in, what you're trying to do. And so that you're not like this unit that's operating behind closed doors. You want to get right out there in front of everybody and say, this is what we want to do, go to fairs, anything you can, take time to
Yeah.
jump in and do.
What tactics did you, so you said you used newspapers and.
Yep, we attended that we did a trolley tour for the Mendon Fest, a Rock the Block. So we got a trolley, we went around and we toured the whole district, the local district, and people paid to get on the bus and taught them all about, the houses and the community and Main Street. So that was very helpful.
Because it's both the heritage shades, you could probably do at least like some of the little circuit around the north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because there's a bunch of stuff that's really each other there, that's all pretty old.
And then you're right, you have these different levels, the state register, the National Historic Register, which is only ceremonial in
Right.
purpose. All of that has been established. Now, what you're digging into is the local historic district. That's when you bring in, you do the study work, you get the word out. I believe that at the time, when we first went down this path, we were working with Chris Skelly from Mass Historic. He came out and talked to us. And we actually had a workshop with him to talk about, the pros and cons of, historic districts, how to get it going. Jen Doherty might also be doing that kind of work as well, or she's got connections.
Yeah.
to this.
We've definitely talked to her in the past. Her name sounds really
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah.
Sharon.
I know that we've talked to her in the past about this.
Yeah, very valuable resource.
Do you know, Chris Scully is still at the MHC or?
He isn't with MHC, but I believe that he still does things related to MHC.
Like in the industry still.
Yeah, so he hasn't really disappeared, like, because I was doing some workshop. Yeah, I mean, talk to everybody, get a quick pamphlet together. This is what we're trying to do. Yeah,
Places in town. So, as we well know.
And I feel like table card things to here's a thing that you can look at with your, not that they would necessarily let us put them there, but we might be able to put them at the senior center. Too, just to,
So it sounds like
it's
that's.
not all senior, don't get me wrong, I just.
Guys, that was step one, public outreach. But
Yeah.
That's really the first.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like that's really.
you need the buy-in.
Even before submitting any, because like you said, there's a timer. Once you start like the submission part, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a timer. I'm just looking through it now. So it sounds, you have to, once your report is done, you have to submit it to the state, I think 60 days before you hold a public hearing. You also have to submit it to your planning board 60 days before the town meeting. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to hold a hearing,
But
but
they
you
have
have to
to see
submit
it.
it to them.
Yeah.
And I would urge you to consider doing it like certified mail, hand delivered, so there's no question that it wasn't delivered to them. I mean, we had some issues. But,
Yeah, you said they didn't like it, so.
Right. And then you have to have, and all like the town meeting stuff has to be done, and then if you have to make changes to it. So it's just making sure you've got enough time before your town meeting, like you have to have an actual map with like, we use CMRPC to do it. But it's not like a charter where you have to finish with a amount of time. You just have to go through all these
You have to do
processes with enough time to,
With enough time for it to be back.
right.
essentially backdated.
Yeah.
Cause like I think the Mass State Historic Commission has to have a meeting and review it and make a recommendation, and I think that's part of it.
So then it's like, figure out what town meeting you think that you can socialize it by.
Right,
And then work backwards from there when you need to have the report in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
and I
So,
forget,
that's how we
I know we were looking
we
a lot.
managed it,
I
yeah.
think-
So it could be presented at any of our town meetings?
apparently,
Doesn't have to be like the.
Well, we also, that might be a question for your administration. We got pushback in Mendon that some things like that are better received in an annual. People feel like you're just, I mean, so in Mendon, we've got it down to an annual and a special, and that's
yeah,
it.
we do too.
Yeah.
We have one in the spring and one in the fall and they're routine now. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think,
It's special. Is it special? It's just like something you do.
Yeah, just
Sometimes
paying
we're
bills,
basically have like,
Yeah.
not just farmers who only get together once a year or
we
something.
have certain people that will deliberately stand up and shoot things down because they feel that it should have been presented at the annual.
That's
yeah, it
not,
So
needs
just
to be,
politically, sometimes it's better received, but like for us now,
yeah, I think ours is the spring, it's the fall, that's.
Yeah.
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 We're the same, you're
I
like,
mean, like, you wouldn't see if I get it done. Realistically, that's not.
what was the
Yeah,
deadline
no.
we said for the North Ave? I want to say it was like, we needed to have everything done by like the 7th.
Yeah.
For the Maytown meeting.
yeah, so
Uh-huh.
we're already behind schedule. So
Because we're
what
trying to
we
be
ended up
efficient.
doing was that we knew this was always gonna be a hard sell, so we had 3 designated districts. There's the North Ave district, there's the Village Center district, and then what's the other one? The Washington Street.
Yeah,
So we took Main Street. And we said, all right, we're gonna put Main Street in front of the voters first. there's a huge emotional component to that because everybody's tied to the churches, the town hall.
You really like the way the town looks.
Exactly. You don't want to see this stuff disappear.
Care about, that those buildings are on the main street as you drive through town.
That's changed.
Yeah, just so wonderful. I mean, yeah, yeah.
So that was a tactic that made it easier to sell it to the county.
Right, we gave them pieces, yep. So then we had Jane Lowell's property, the Taft property. She came in as an individual historic district. And then the next round, we did Washington, we had about 2 years layover between districts.
Yeah.
Then we brought in Washington Street.
Washington was a struggle trying to,
Yeah, Washington was
everything
a
together.
struggle because developers were already looking at that property.
Bylaw was passed, but you've got these other districts.
yeah, so once your bylaw's done, to do another district, you basically just have the map, you go to town meeting and say, we want to add this map.
Yeah.
So in some places, you might have separate district commissions.
Uh-huh.
Like if you had very distinct districts, and I think some bigger cities have that. In our case, it all falls under the one district, so it's very simple. So we just said the same thing again. Yeah,
Right, right.
But that doesn't mean it's gonna be any easier to sell it with the second district, because everyone district gonna have their.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
It could be good or bad depending on what's in the district and how they feel about being in the district.
yeah, 5 years, Kathy.
As I'm thinking about it, we could have been.
5 years, 17 to 22.
This church, that church, and the steam building, because that doesn't impact anybody, and everybody would probably be in favor of that.
Right.
So once we get that established, then we could, include.
And the add-ons are usually not difficult. Like what, the only reason that Washington Street became an issue is we have a developer that was purchasing some properties on 16 in Washington. So what the hope was we could preserve what we could on Washington Street without disrupting that neighborhood, which had already been identified by the state. So we were very lucky. We were able to work, we've been negotiating on, how things are working out.
It was a contentious situation.
It was all,
Have to be a contentious.
exactly, but every single resident that we spoke to had no issue with it. They wanted to be protected because it's a quiet, peaceful little street and wide roads and old stone walls, and they didn't want that to go away.
Right.
They didn't want it to become a freeway with traffic trying to, get up and down to hit the business at the ends.
I think, I don't, but I think like the north section too would be a pretty easy sell for rest of this.
Yeah.
And Wilson Street.
I think that would be the easiest.
I feel like that would be-
Yeah, historic home.
They're all historic.
Yeah.
homes. Everybody who's there wants it as a historic home. It's quiet. They're in a good spot for that.
This is on the historic commission. It's 2 houses right behind us.
Oh, does we?
Yeah.
Great about it, built it, he has investors.
Wow.
And if you ask him a question about it being in town, he'll tell you what someone was doing in their farm in 1910.
I know.
Yeah.
No, they used to have hay in the before times. Yeah.
And, be aware of who the developers are who are coming into the community. We need to really inform ourselves. What are the empty spots in town?
Right, yeah.
Where is development going? Tune into the planning board, kind of monitor what's going on. So you can kind of say, all right, so, let's get on that one first because this is, this is at risk,
it's funny.
you know?
We finally met with the developer. And he was all like, it was actually a really good conversation because he realized that we didn't actually care what he built because he was building new. We just wanted it to look nice, which it was
Right.
going to.
You were like.
And then
It's not look ugly.
none of it's gonna be visible from the public way anyway, so very likely it's gonna be exempt. So it was a whole,
So cool. So
Non-issue.
we're all chill then, yeah.
Right, exactly. And I
Was
think,
40B an issue with that conversation, or is it? just-
so we don't have town water in most of Mendon, so we've been fortunate. We don't get 40B because it's not cost effective.
Okay.
This same developer was threatening 40B, although I don't know if it was actually viable. I think it was a threat
Yeah.
and they've since amended the bylaws and come to an agreement and they'll figure something out.
It's a good point, because our town gets almost at this 68 unit apartment, it's getting like a multi-story district up on the hill, overlooking everything. They offered to swap land with the guy, and his first question was, is there town water and sewer? The answer was no. He said, no, we got town water and sewer.
Yeah, I mean, it was obvious that was part of the draw. There's not that many lots
You know, so-
that are of any kind of substance in general, because we have a very short stretch of town water and sewer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought you had more than.
It just doesn't go very far into the town, so, most of the offshoot, like, it goes down like the main road, but most of the
Yeah.
offshoots, it doesn't go down, so, I mean, town water goes down
Yeah.
farther.
I'll have to
but
look-
town
I'll have to
sewer
ask for it.
doesn't.
Yeah.
To get that.
Like, what? Quarter of a mile from Main Street, I don't have it.
Yeah, well, I think Doug Murphy's at like 13th Road, and they've got water, but like, places don't have sewer
And
and.
have water.
Do you have a master plan?
We do, yeah.
And when was it last
It
updated?
hasn't been updated.
Yeah, it is 2000.
You have a master plan?
We just passed
Yeah.
the master plan, yeah, but we, very long.
CMRPC, if you can get them, they'll.
Yeah, I don't know, but
It'd be
it's,
great.
they like have put anybody together to do that, yeah. That was a conversation that was being had like last year or the year before, and I don't know that any movement has been done on it.
So what, regarding the master plan, how does that impact the historic district, or does it have? an impact?
Well, basically, there's a whole historic component to it. So we did a lot of surveys, townwide surveys. They gave us excellent feedback as to how people felt about, the history of the community, the look of the community, what they wanted to save, and, what was, out of, what they felt was out of the town's purview, but we were able to take all that information, just plug it right in. It was very valuable for us, but we've never had a master plan, so,
It should be on the website,
On
the
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 website.
master plan.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, there was a lot of support, I think, from people.
yeah.
I mean, and I will say something we did struggle with and actually ran into some trouble with is like the historic district is not to prevent development. And in fact, using it to prevent development is wrong. And that's like, I think we got into a little bit of trouble where it's like, we're not, we don't want to stop you from developing. We just want it to match the neighborhood. So build your giant apartment thing, but could you make the facade not look like an ugly building?
Right.
And so I think that was, we had learned a little bit later on.
We
Yeah.
just had that one, bought a house and took out the wrong. Building fell and was.
Yeah.
Two-story house, and we said, could you change the windows and make it look like a farmhouse is here?
Yeah.
Fine, yeah. Well, that was the story. We'll see what we end up with. We definitely heard before, yeah, it totally looked like the building I'm observed for. And I'm like, but you can't, I mean, like, I would love that. And I believe that he thought that when he said it, because the building that was ultimately constructed in a general sense looks very similar to a Cape building.
Yeah.
The problem is that the massing with a modern building that is to code and the massing of an actual 18th century Cape building, they're just different. You can't build, even if you really super duper wanted to, you can't legally build a building that looks the same.
No.
So it's just not going to do that. And so it always looks a little bit stupid, and it's close to the road. So you drive by and you're like, but on some level, you couldn't really do that much about it. Yeah.
So.
Right. But you know, that's you can only,
Is there any pitfalls that you would say, looking back, we really shouldn't have done this, or we would have done something differently? As far as, it was pretty much smooth sailing.
I don't think so. I mean, it was, it's all the tweaking, and just, right, and being mindful of, this process isn't working the way we hoped it would, and just, we may need to change some language and things like that, but I think.
So did you have to hire a lawyer for the legal verbiage of it, or were you able to?
It's a state template and we just took it. And I think you can modify it. So if in that manual, I think the language is in there, they have a template bylaw. They did all the work. That is something, and I don't know, again, how things are in Upton. We struggled getting town council to review and respond to our thing, and that politically took some fighting.
Okay.
That may have had to do with administration issues and no longer a factor.
Depends largely on where your town manager or whatever like falls on.
Yeah. It
Right,
Sounds like
right.
Upton is maybe a little more functional.
We might be a little bit more functional
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
Mendon as a whole, I think, and maybe specifically right now in that, maybe not before, but specifically in that
Right.
issue.
Right,
I feel like some town managers are more,
When it-
Friendly to historic commission.
Building.
they retired, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Primary gal, the data entry paperwork, communicating with stuff. She got hired by the developer who's in town trying to do this, that. and the house.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
So.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Additional construction.
to go back in terms of pitfalls, I do think the one mistake
Yeah,
is I think the study committee, like I said, they got the first thing done and then they all
Right,
just
so-
said, oh, we're done. And then everything, nothing happened for like a year and a half. So just making sure that there's a commitment to have a district commission in place to then enforce the district. I mean, I think it took us 6 months just to write the design guidance and just like, all right, we have to do something because otherwise this bylaw is meaningless.
right.
And-
If nobody's sitting on the committee
Yeah,
to
and I-
go through it, then it just doesn't work.
I feel like I said, that's a lawyer question. You may be able to have it be the same group of people, but you may legally have to have two distinct commissions that even if you meet jointly and even if it's the same people, I don't know exactly how that works.
So with the study committee, did the select board have to appoint the study?
Yeah.
committee? They did, okay,
Yeah, we can't make committees on our own.
yeah.
But I think they could appoint you as, to just say, we're gonna make the historic commission, the study committee.
Okay,
But that may be a question for the state too. There's like,
so you almost had to get the select board on board.
right, you do.
To get the study committee.
You want to keep feeding them information. Here's where we're at. This is what we're, hoping to do. And, we're looking at this.
Nothing really happens in this type of government without the select board being on board. So,
Yeah,
well, especially when,
Yeah.
you're appointed.
Yeah.
So you're
right.
appointed
Like, they
for it.
can't- You can't do
Right.
anything if they don't.
right.
Yeah, so we might be in a meeting with the select board, just, hey, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but we are appointed, so we answer to them, whereas like I'm on the Parks Commission, we're elected, I do not answer the select. board. Whereas Upton has a rec commission who's appointed that does, it's
Yeah.
a
So
different.
that would have been our one pitfall, was that we did not get the support and we weren't working smoothly with the select board
Well, I
and the
think-
town manager.
I
And
think you
things
did
started to,
Initially,
yeah,
and
well,
the
we-
problem is things, and Mendon had, so I think Mendon is in a much better place now. And where we have a new town administrator, and I think things are more cohesive. Cause I think that's what happened. You had like members supported it, but then it was a 3-member board and people left. And then when we came back, it was kind of a fight.
Okay, so did you feel like they kind of felt like they weren't involved on the first step of the process and therefore they were kind of giving you.
it's not-
It was right when Goddard got off the select, board, right? That was why
Right.
he did this. He decided to, so it was a former selectman, so I think that helped the initial push.
yeah,
Um.
because he was part of
who
the
was on
study
the board At
committee.
the time, it would have been Burke, maybe? Was it
Yeah.
Maybe Lonnie,
Yeah,
This is a side note, but
I'm just thinking,
piggybacking on the idea of getting like buy-in, we should probably put up a sign, like a placard or something, during Heritage Day, explaining what the color, I don't know if it'll be painted by then, but explaining the color choice for the church.
That's good.
Because I feel like that, because otherwise people will think we just made it up. And I don't feel like dealing with that.
Whoever I speak to, I say, complete the original.
Right, like we just like put a placard, put the like little black and white photograph, talk about paint chips, blah, 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 paint chips, whatever. But something that can describe the process and that this is being preserved in a historically appropriate way, because I feel like that cuts off grousing, and also like makes people think about that this is a building that's actively being preserved.
For sure.
Wow.
yeah,
And then you can build up that And also, you know, it answers a question, gives people something to look at if you're not having to tour it or whatever.
But then we got the problem, we've got two very large buildings right in the downtown, church and another church, and church is completely empty, the abandoned for 11 years since St. Michael and Holy.
Right?
Yeah, the town hall, like, was it, well, this is big, right?
Yeah.
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 Only at the Historic Society Museum, and they're trying to find someone to rent out the first floor and stuff, that was gonna be cleaned and painted this fall, try and keep preserving them, try and find
Right.
someone who's interested in doing something.
Yeah, the previous administration wasn't super concerned about it not rotting in place. They would been quite willing for it to just disappear. And then we could have built something else there. And the new one seems more amenable
So
to.
it'd be like
letting
taking
use
down
that.
two buildings in the center of it, across from each other, 204 buildings.
Do you have circa signs in Upton that you do?
So there are some, but they're put up, so they're done by the society.
Okay.
The circle signs are done. My understanding was it was like a fundraiser for the society. I'm not sure exactly, because this was long before my
Yeah.
time, but they haven't done them in years. And so the ones that were under overhangs are nice, but the ones that were not, it's clearly just like pine that's been painted and.
They're warping.
Now,
Yeah.
they need to be redone. I would love for BBT to make them up out of the MDF that they made our sign of, because then they wouldn't do that. But we had a sign made for us by.
Yeah, they do. They'll make signs if you can.
And it's like it's the computerized one where they could just like put it in and they'll carve it out. We don't have to have like the long thing that we did for the nice sign, because they're small, right? They just need to put in the name.
Yeah.
So I would love,
Somebody else out of it.
this is a dream. I would love for the society to do that as a.
Actually, there's somebody else, the Boy Scouts. One of those
Yeah.
guys.
Because they need fundraisers. And the ones that are available in town are mostly on their last line, still exist.
I
There's
guess-
definitely a bunch that have
yeah.
gone away, well, things, and also the more Victorian houses never got them, because the year that they did them, like my house, I guess, wasn't eligible whenever Barbara told me what year it was, I don't remember what year it was, but, I don't remember if it was like everything before 1860 or 1870 or something, whatever it was before, but like, it's been, whatever it's been, 30 years or whatever since then, so
Just, yeah, they really, we
there's a
found,
bunch more.
they raise awareness,
So, yeah.
especially with new people, and we get lots of calls from real estate agents going, what does this mean? Is this house protected? Is it whatever? It just,
I feel like there's a bunch of
it
houses.
really helps raise awareness that these houses are old.
A great way to
We
great
found,
time and like advertise the historic nature of whoever's house it is in a positive way. Like, look, advertise your cool house. You got this cool house, you know? And some people still have ones that are fine, but
Yeah.
there's a bunch that you're seeing, you're like, oh, it's not a good one. It looks as old as the planet.
Well, I just wanted to thank you guys for taking the time. I know it's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you guys.
Believe me, it's a road we've been on a long time.
Yeah, I think this is a super valuable conversation that we had here tonight. And I think it's really getting the gears turning on how Upton might be able to pursue it. And it gives me a lot of hope that, you know, hearing that you guys had the same experience in the 1990s where you got turned down and then you went ahead and got it established later in the 2000s. So that's.
Yeah, I think there's also been some population turnover that probably helps too.
Right, I
yeah,
mean,
we
I
noticed
just feel
that
like
Mendon, I think.
Upton has a more progressive,
Yes,
you know.
that would be what the returns, voting returns would suggest.
That's what I had suggested too. It seems like Upton is moving.
Well, no, it's not universal, like slightly more purple than Mendon's more red. It's like a, you know,
Yeah, in terms of this stuff
it's
too, I
the
think
shade.
people want these things
So I think we're seeing.
and are fed up with.
As much as up there, what we're seeing is a tremendous turnover. People coming and going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
There's
our,
no more people here 10, 12 years, they
Yeah.
had 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
right,
I'm
right.
not-
Yeah, and then it depends on where in town you're talking about too, because some parts of town, those people have been there forever.
Absolutely.
And then other parts of the town, I feel like there is a lot of turnover.
That's with the newer.
And more, yeah, more towards you.
Yeah,
I
oh,
would
yeah.
say. More towards you, there's a lot more of that rotational turnover in a lot of the newer houses. And there is some like in the rest of the town.
She doesn't want to win.
I don't dislike your part of town. It's just newer. It was all
No.
farmland and then they built developments there. Up here, you had already built houses. So there's no
I
place.
mean, I don't know how it is in Upton. I know in Mendon, I think the residents are fed up with development and things that they don't like coming into town and boards doing what they want with no, waiving things and playing fast and loose with the rules.
Yeah.
And so I think that has helped support these initiatives where, I mean, I think Upton maybe is a little bit better than Mendon. Basically in Mendon, there was and still is very little enforcement on a lot of stuff.
Okay,
And it's very slowly getting better. I mean, this is huge. Now all the meetings are recorded,
right.
everything's documented. But there was a big chunk of time that Yes. things were waived, things were done, and
Like,
There's no control over conformity. Developer comes in, here's my piece of land, here's the money, I buy it, go to the town. It's fine, we can't control it, build whatever you want to build.
Yeah.
Build it wherever on the land you want to build it, however you want to build
oh,
it.
but we have,
There's very few restrictions.
oh, there's wetland, oh, there's not wetland. No.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's funny.
Everybody gets upset about development, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I think that's the sense that most people have.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, honestly,
Exactly.
the developer, I mean, his stuff is beautiful when he does it right. The problem is they just try and game the system.
do you have the ability to force them to do
You know.
it right? Or to make it so that it's not cost effective for them to
Right.
do it poorly?
So I was gonna add as well that, we have like this sample survey, when you get the local historic district, developing a local historic district manual, which I think the state
Yeah.
publishes them too, but you can get them electronically, but it gives you a, kind of a layout on the steps, how to, what you need to
Yeah, I
do.
need a-
Yeah, it is. It's a great,
Do the section A and go on to.
You're saying that's on the state website?
yeah. And, I can also send you the questionnaire that we sent out to the residents. We did a little postcard flyer and sent those out and said, we didn't send them to everyone. We sent them to the people in the district. But we did open the meeting to everybody. We got advertised through the local newspaper. So we said, all right, anybody who would like to come and join the conversation. But, our biggest selling point was we got to get the people in the district
Those are the
to
people who
be
are-
good with this, right? Exactly.
If you live on the other side of town and are not really affected by it, even if you get up at town meeting and say, I don't want things to be preserved. That's not as big of a deal as being like, you are gonna prevent me from painting my house the bright pink I always wanted. That was-
Darn it.
Like,
Kept open pink.
No, I mean, I sort of love that, honestly. Is it ghastly?
It's ghastly and it's in like their historic district. I mean, sure.
Franklin has lime green.
Ghastly and landmark though. This is the thing. And
Yeah.
People will be like, I love that purple house, my whole childhood, it was the best thing I ever saw, and it becomes, it's like, I'm not, there's a house like that in my hometown. And when it was painted, we were all like, what are you on? Cause it's like purple, but then it has like rainbow trim,
Yeah.
like it's Victorian, so like all of the different types of trim are painted a different color.
Wow.
It's an extra house, but like, also you know that house, right? And so like, in another 30 years, that's like an historic
Color.
look for the way that house is, right? So it's such a like, I love that about paint because at the very least, if it's awful and everybody hates it,
You
the
can
next door
change it.
can just change
Yep,
it and then it's
absolutely.
fine. But like, it is funny how it, like your perception, people will come in and be like, oh, that's been here since when I moved in the 1970s. And like, that's a part of home to me, and you're just, okay, but it's like, needs to be torn down, like whatever, like, it's not good. It's just was here when you came and you remember that time very fondly.
Right.
Because you were, 25 and your kids were just born and you felt very happy with your life or whatever. And so now this building is like an icon of that time in your life,
Yeah.
and you have those feelings towards it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make the building like structurally sound.
Yeah.
You know?
So that's what,
Like, I really, obviously I like historic buildings, that's why I'm here.
Right, right.
But there is a point at which you're like, is this historic? Or do you just have feelings about it? Like, they're not really the same thing. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I love lots of my family's recipes, but that doesn't always make me enjoy.
Um,
Right, right, exactly.
Right, like sometimes your Nana just couldn't cook.
Yeah. You know what, tap into your historic society
Yeah.
too, to see if they can like bring old photos to
Oh, yeah.
Heritage Day.